preacher was the focus of the movement, as you saw with Reverend Martin Luther King, Reverend Jesse Jackson, Reverend Al Sharpton, and others.
I think you answered all our questions already.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, I believe that you started the Fame Church. Can you describe some of the programs that the church was involved in?
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes, I was pleased to pastor at the first AME church for 27 years, AME, African Methodist Episcopal. It's the oldest black church in Los Angeles. It was founded by a former slave woman, Biddy Mason, who was brought out by a slave caravan from Mississippi to the San Fernando Valley in California. And strangely enough, the caravan was a church caravan, a Mormon caravan, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They have since sent for me out in their headquarters in Utah, and the President Hinckley, gave a full apology for their participation in slavery, a full apology that the founder of our church in Los Angeles was in a Mormon slave caravan. Biddy Mason asked of the head of the caravan if she would be allowed to walk as a sheep herder after they left Mississippi, coming across the country, because she didn't feel that she could ride into slavery. I'd rather walk and be free in spirit than ride and to be comfortable in slavery. So she was a sheep herder, walked the 2,000 miles and so forth and so on and so on. Once they arrived in California, the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed, setting blacks free, 1861, 1862. The slave master decided to take the slaves back to Mississippi because California would be a free state. Biddy Mason and a few others escaped, went to the county jail and asked if they could be held there in custody until the slave master and the slaves left. They were granted that. They stayed there in the county jail. Then when the slave caravan left, they were set free. Biddy Mason then began to work as one who helped women to deliver babies, because she didn't have the fancy word for it. She had no formal education, but was a woman of immense wisdom. She's remembered as saying, "It is the open hand that is blessed, for with the closed hand, nothing can get out, but nothing can get in either." She went on to become a midwife, and instead of taking money in payment, and they were predominantly white women delivering babies, they took property. This was a time when Los Angeles County was just forming, and what is now downtown was the outskirts of Los Angeles. And that property, as the area grew and with the gold rush and all, with Americans coming out in the Great Migration, she became one of the first wealthy women generally in the California territory, and the first black female woman to be wealthy. Downtown on 5th and Spring Street, they have erected a memorial wall to Biddy Mason, who helped to develop that, and then there's a shopping center there. But then she went on to start a church. She was in the Methodist Church, White Methodist Church here in the LA territory. Then she pulled out and they started meeting in her home. And she started the African Methodist Episcopal Church. The bishop came and ordained it as a part of the larger African Methodist Episcopal Church. And they met in her home, then in a larger place. Then they built the church at 8th and Town. And then in 1968, they built the new church at its present site. It's 2270 South Harvard Boulevard near Adams and Western. She is memorialized as the founder, as a caretaker, as a woman of wisdom and courage, and as something of a saint among us. When I arrived, they had grown. The pastor going out told me that he got them up to 250 members. Okay, all right. I, of course, had to take a decrease in salary because they didn't have the money. I had spent 6 years in Seattle, and before that, 5 years in Kansas City, and before that, 3 years in Pomona. Coming to Los Angeles, I had a $7,000 a year decrease in salary to $18,000, but they started fine. But we did have a parsonage, and my wife and I, my son Drew, we were able to stay there. And after, because we had no living room furniture for 3 years, so it was starting with modest thing. But somehow, I believe with all my heart that if you give yourself to the people, if you give yourself to God, God will help you find the tools you need to go beyond what you need. In those years there, we reached out to men. The women gave us permission to really prioritize men because black man was and is in crisis. And we were able to recruit some 6,500 men as we grew to 18,000 in total membership. And those 6,500 men undertook being mentors to young black males coming up, starting with them in 3rd grade and working with them until they went on to college. So we had the men's organizations, we had youth organizations, we had 18 different programs. One was summer jobs. We were blessed, went out to Disney, talked to Michael Eisner, and Michael Eisner and the Disney Corporation agreed to open up 300 slots each summer for young people. They would work either at the Disney theme park or at the Disney hotel. our job was to prepare them to work. So in the last 2 months before school shut down for summer, we would meet 3-hour blocks of time. We would talk about communication, dress, punctuality, honesty, earnestness, and so forth, so on. Disney would provide transportation. Later, he gave us a bus, one of these 40, 45 passenger buses that helped, so forth, and the kids, therefore, could have the income from the summer, they could have the discipline that went with it, and they could have some real understanding of the work ethic. Then we had summer camps for those who were not working with Disney, and we had 4 high visibility movie stars, blacks, who would come lecture to the kids, because those kids would recognize them as movie stars, so forth, and talk to them. We had retired teachers who would work with the kids and so forth. We had seniors who would volunteer 5 hours a week and so forth. But the kids, we had a program we called Lock-In. We would lock ourselves in with 300 youth, 2 groups, 6-year-old to 12-year-old, and then 13-year-old to 18-year-old. We would have separate lock-ins. We'd go from sunset Friday to 9 o'clock Saturday morning, and they'd spend the whole time at the church. We would have workshops, programs, skill teaching, so forth. And then we'd allow them to dance from 11 o'clock to about 1 o'clock. Then they went to sleep. They were kind of exhausted and so forth, so on. Another program was the mock jury trial. At that time, Judge Roosevelt Dorn, who later became Mayor Roosevelt Dorn of Inglewood, California, he would serve as judge, and then we would bring kids before the court. Usually we had about 400 on an average kids there, because the parents were joining them and so forth. And the parent would say, here's a child who's not been doing well in school, making C's and D's instead of A's and B's. So we'd have a prosecuting attorney and a defending attorney, and the kid would sit there on trial, and we would have a mock trial. Then they would vote, the judge would sentence him to so forth, so on. Then we bring the next case up, and the next case and so forth. It was really a helpful thing. We had after-school programs. Normally they were from retired teachers and educators. And then we had a prison ministry to do prison visits with those in jail, to do correspondence. We had about 70, 75 people that we were in regular correspondence with. And we were able, when the economy was fine, when the economy fell, they had to stop. But the state prison system would bring 2 bus loads of prisoners to worship with us each Sunday. And oh my goodness, to see those men sitting there, many of them weeping and all, and the people opened their arms, made them feel well, built lines of communication with them, and then they'd get back on the bus. We would have dinner after